look out. Here come former SportsCenter anchor Bob Stevens, esteemed basketball coach Rich Basirico, and Hall of Fame sports writer Curry Kirkpatrick. And someone's going under the bus.
Welcome into Under the Bus, brought to you by Hudson's on the Docks, a great restaurant on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina, hudsonsonthedocks.com. If you want to go check them out, checking us out, there will be talk of the second most consequential election on Tuesday. We will throw no politicians under the bus, I don't think, in the next half hour or so. Maybe we will. But let's get to those first rankings. The Donald Trump of college football is the Oregon Ducks right now. Number one with a bullet. They are the undisputed champions, at least this week.
Of the rankings, right?
Of the rankings, yeah. The rest of the top four, Georgia was second, Miami was third, Brigham Young is fourth. Guys, what do you think? Does anybody go under the bus from these rankings?
I don't know.
Guys, are you there? Hey,
I mean, I have to think about it.
I'm still recovering from the election. I just want to get two of the sports world's, former world of sports figures who were politicians. Both went under the bus yesterday. The two most prominent, Callan Allred, who is a former Tennessee Titan linebacker, tried to upset Ted Cruz in Texas, got swamped. It was supposed to be a lot closer. He got smoked. And then, of course, Steve Garvey, the great Dodger star who was always a politician while he was playing, tries to be one in real life, and he got smoked also in the California Senate race by Adam Schiff. So the two most prominent sports guys went under. But the college football playoffs, I don't know if you saw that show. ESPN turns a 5-minute announcement into an hour show, and they tried to and the rankings and the seedings were different. So I had a hard time following where they were gonna put the teams and where they were seated, and it seemed more it was more complicated than explaining how a convicted felon who wants to deport every Hispanic American can get the Hispanic American vote in every swing state. Complicated for me, but anyway, I digress. Indiana, undefeated Indiana was like number 9 or something, and everybody in Indiana is angry. But I don't know what. It just it's complicated because we're there.
Don't you think Indiana Curry should be up much higher? I mean, they're undefeated. They've been beating everybody by double digits. I mean, I know there's
except they played the 103rd ranked schedule in the country. So I don't know. They have to prove it to me. Their game is going to be with Ohio State in a couple weeks. That's their game of the year. Yeah,
that'd be a big one. Yeah. It's still, to me, it's still early to figure this all out. I mean,
I know. Yeah, it's those rankings are going to change so much. The seeds are going to change, but the four teams who win their leagues in the Big 5 leagues, the top 4 are going to get buys, right?
Which is why Brigham Young is, although they're ranked 9th, is seeded 4. Yeah.
But I'm not sure I wouldn't want to be a team that loses their championship game, because they won't get a bye in the first round. But for instance, it's in these rankings that came out last night. It's Texas at number 5, and they would not get a bye, but they'd play the number 12. They play the worst team in the rankings at home in Austin, and they're not getting a bye, which might hurt some teams,
Well, So in the bracket, Ohio State is 5. In the bracket, they would just have to beat Boise State at home, and then they would get Brigham Young in a bowl game as the second game, and I can't imagine Brigham Young being favored in that one. So they could have a pretty easy road too.
And that's if they lose to Oregon in the championship game of the Big Ten, right? Then they'd fall to number 5. Ohio
Well,
State.
right now they would be seeded 5, and yeah, I mean, who knows what happens between
Yeah,
now and then?
yeah.
You know, that's the thing. Oregon could also lose that Big Ten championship game. I mean, Ohio State could, and still be 5.
Well, they'd still be 5. That's what I mean,
Yeah,
and they'd be in good shape. I'm not sure. I'd be disappointed to lose that championship game, and it might be a SEC team that might be the loser of the SEC championship game might be in better shape than the winner. So,
But why now? Talking about BYU, I know Indiana. We said their schedule is not that strong. How strong is BYU's schedule? That they're
it's in the 50s. I think it's in the 50s.
it's not bad. They
They've
beat
beaten
SMU.
They've beaten
They
two
handed
ranked
SMU
teams.
their only loss, and SMU might be as good as anybody
Right.
playing
Yeah,
right now.
they've beaten 2 ranked teams, BYU.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus they have the Jewish quarterback.
Yeah, here we go again.
Speaking,
Quarterback.
speaking of quarterbacks, Boise State is more than just this Ashton Jaunty, the Heisman Trophy runner. Their quarterback's name, Boise State, is Maddox Jeter Madsen, and sure enough, the kid was born the night Maddox pitched some 1 hit or something, and his mom in the hospital saw the game and named him Maddox Jeter Madsen. His siblings, listen to this. You think his folks are baseball fans? His siblings are named Mick for Mano, McGuire, Mays, and Murphy for Dale Murphy. And then they have a girl. They named her Joe DiMaggio but they named her Joe. But then the mom said no, Joe's too masculine, so she named her Macy Joe, but it's for DiMaggio. She should have named her Marilyn. Marilyn.
There you go. That's right. Well,
So
when I was my son, I used to, when he was driving in the car with me, I always talked to him about Mickey Mantle and the Yankees over and over and over again. When he was about 6, he said to me, "Dad, if you love Mantle so much, why didn't you name me Mickey?" I go, "That's a great question. You got to ask your mom about that one."
There you go.
Was Mickey ever on the plate? Was it ever on the table?
No.
Was it a possibility? Never had a chance.
Never had a chance. Sorry.
Meanwhile, we haven't mentioned the team that we never name, that the NCAA and the CFA, whatever it's called, and the network would rather have in this playoff than any other team. And I hate to break it to you, but it's the team with the Heisman Trophy, the best player in the country, Travis Hunter. The quarterback, the first quarterbacks can be selected, probably Shedeur Sanders, and his father is the most provocative coach. The network would love Colorado to get in this playoff.
Right.
Absolutely.
I agree, totally agree with that. Do you think they have a shot?
Oh yeah, they have. They play. I think they got Texas Tech this week, and then after that they play the 3 weakest teams in the league. They could, but somebody's got to beat Brigham Young, I think, for Colorado to have a shot in the championship game of the Big 12. But
yeah, probably that would have to happen. But now how do the networks get Notre Dame to play them in the playoffs?
Well, they're going to put Notre Dame wherever they want. I mean, there's another team that's going to be questionable.
I'm watching, over my shoulder. We got the game. We got the team that beat Notre Dame.
Northern Illinois.
Everybody forgets Northern Illinois.
But look at what their record is. What is their record right now? It's like 4-4.
Yeah, something like that.
Northern Illinois.
Saturday, huh?
What is it? They're playing a Wednesday night. We're playing a Wednesday night game.
Yep.
This is Maction. Yeah, this is. Come on, this is. In fact, Kent State, who is the worst team in the country, the only team that has not won, the only Division I team that has not won a game, gets to play midweek games the rest of the season. They're like last 4 are all on Wednesdays.
That's terrible.
I mean, how awful!
Well, I know you guys hate me when I talk about Deion Sanders, but there's a possibility if they go to the playoffs, he's going to be coach of the year. If the Indiana guy is in the head, probably in the running, it's undefeated. But Dion,
Coach of the year voted by who?
well,
The other coaches aren't going to vote him coach of the year.
Colorado won one conference game last year. And, they trailed Nebraska 28-0 at the half in the second week of the season. And they've come back from this, and they're doing great now. And they've got these two terrific players. And I'd love to see, I think I'd love to see him play somebody good in the playoffs. Speaking of somebody good, how about Rich? You haven't gotten to James Franklin yet. Speaking of under the bus,
he needs to go under the bus. Can he ever beat a team in the top 10? Is that possible for him to do that? How do you get inside the 5-yard line, first and goal, and can't score? How can that happen?
He's
I'm
1
still pretty
10.
good friends with the last generation's James Franklin, John Cooper. Runs a wonderful program, never gets in trouble, but can't win the big game. And oh boy, poor James Franklin.
Franklin's now 1 10 versus Ohio State, and he's 3 for 100 or something versus top 10 teams. Rich, you spoke
but you
of
can't
that.
Get rid of him, can you?
He brought in this offensive genius, supposed guy named Andy Katalnicki, and they scored 1 TD against Ohio State last year. They scored 0 TDs on offense against them this year. And Rich, that play you're talking about, with 6 minutes to go, this guy, the Penn State tight end, guy named Tyler Warren, he's the guy that played center a few weeks ago and caught a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
He's an absolute monster.
Right?
He went 33 yards down to the 3-yard line to get him first and goal, 6 minutes to go, 4 downs. He never touched the ball in any of those downs. He's the best player in the field. He's an absolute monster, and they never touched the ball.
What I don't understand is teams, not only in college but in the NFL, they get the ball either on the 3-yard line for extra 2-point conversion or inside the 5. They must work on that. They have to. Do you not have 2 or 3 plays that you have the most confidence that your team can be successful in? The plays that they run, you're sitting there going, what are they doing? If they're running out, they're sprinting out to the right, so they only got 1/3 of the field or the end zone to pass the ball to. And there's no creativity to it whatsoever. I mean, just one guy rolls out and the other guy, the quarterback's looking for him and nothing happens. I mean, come on, you got to spend time in practice over and over and over again. End of the game situations. Do it in basketball all the time. All the time.
Rich, you're a coach. If you have the best player in the game, James Franklin's got Tyler Warren. He's just exploded down the field through the whole Ohio State team to the 3, and you don't get him the ball in 4 downs. I mean, what are you doing?
Well, it's just like in basketball, you have your best player, and it's the end of the game. Would you not get the ball to him every time? You go to that guy, and sure, they're going to double team him. I get all that. But you got to go to him at least, if not once, twice, 3 times, and see. So that's why those are the plays you have to work on. Those are the plays you have to work on to get him open.
I would have made him a center eligible play again. Get him at center and then throw the ball again. I mean, no wonder James Franklin can't win the big game. I mean, he might as well be Ben Franklin. But no light bulbs ever go off if he was Ben Franklin. I mean, yet here's the deal.
I saw it was either at a college game or a pro game this weekend, and I darn if I can remember who I saw do it. They motioned the tight end across the formation, and then when they were in the shotgun, they just direct snapped it to him, and he dove in. I mean, it was a little bit of trickery, but you can get your best guy the ball that way with the least amount of hassle.
I remember one of our former players played at Syracuse, tight end, against Ohio State in a bowl game, and quarterback rolled out, which, okay, I've just mentioned he shouldn't be doing that, but he rolled out. He was on the left side. He stayed in the block, and then he released and went into the corner. And so he threw the ball across the grain, wide open. Nobody was near him because he stayed in the block, then released. Quarterback rolled. Everybody was rolling that way. He came right back across the grain. I mean, there wasn't a guy within 5 yards of him. There's never anything done misdirection. How to misdirection play?
Yeah, you got to have a play. You got to have a play like that down on the goal line.
You practice it every day.
And yet, Penn State is going to be the team most favored by this 12-team playoff because they're going to be, they're 7-1 now. They're going to run. They got 4 dogs they're playing.
Right.
They're going to run the table. They're going to get in the playoff. I'm sure they're going to get in a playoff and maybe get a home game.
They
And
might. They might.
but who thinks Franklin can do anything but one and done in the playoff when he's playing teams comparable to Penn State? No way.
He'll lose the first round of the playoffs. He will.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to say you want to play them, even if you have to go to Happy Valley. Huh?
Sure.
Speaking
I'll
of,
tell you who's
Happy
I'll tell
Valley
you
was
who's
almost
happy.
as dangerous as Death Valley this last week. Clemson put on quite a show.
That was awful. That was awful.
Played their way out.
They're coming off a bye week too. Off a bye week, they've been playing well, and everything was in the flats again. He wasn't throwing down the field. It was because they were playing 6-man in a box, so he went everything to the flats. He was outcoached again. Totally outcoached again.
And then Dabo tried to vote yesterday. You see what happened? Dabo tried to vote, and they turned him away. They wouldn't let him vote because his real name is William, and apparently his son had voted a few days ago as William, so he was locked out. He couldn't even vote. He said we're 6-2, and I've been voted out of my own state.
Tough time for old Dabo, I tell you. Anybody else to throw into the bus? College football, or can we move on?
You talk about Happy Valley. I'll tell you one person that's so happy there is a Happy Valley is Ryan Day, the Ohio State guy, because he's only 3-6 versus top 5 teams. He's so lucky. He's so happy there's a Penn State that he can beat. What's the name?
You're supposed to be under 500 against the top 5. I mean, that's why they're the top 5. But Franklin's record's pathetic.
Well, and did you see, prior to the big game, did you see what Ryan Day's predecessor, the wonderful Urban Meyer, who I call Urban Decay, he said Ryan's got the most expensive team ever, $20 million in NIL. And he should win the game. And he put all this pressure on the guy. Said he should win the game because he's got the most expensive team.
That sounds like Urban Meyer. That sounds like him.
Yeah. With a mentor like that, who needs Michigan? I mean, Ryan Day. Urban Meyer. What a scumbag. Jeez.
Yeah, he really is. He's awful. He showed his face when he coached the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right. Here's your prediction then. Urban Meyer's coaching someplace next year.
I hope not. That's my prediction.
He will be. He will be. Probably someplace in college, and probably someplace that's willing to spend almost $20 million.
Right, exactly. And then after a couple of seasons, he'll get sick again. He'll have stomach ailments.
In fact, how about
I know where he might coach that might be available is our regular weekly under the bus contestant, Mike Gundy. Did you see his late breaking news of his press conference? Gundy, Oklahoma State, they've lost 6 in a row, and the fans are all critical. And he called his fans all failures who can't pay their own bills. And in a press conference, and he had to apologize. And that, well, he obviously wants to get fired and go to work in the Fox studio or somewhere. He obviously looking to get fired.
So the problem is they won't fire him. He's got a terrific. They're going to build a statue to the guy eventually.
He's making like $7 million. He's making like $7 million, right?
Yeah, he's making tons of money. This is the first time he's ever been, thrown under the bus by his own fans, and he's. But
I'm 40. I'm 40. Pick on me. I'm 40.
That's
remember,
right.
Mike? And he's now 60. He's 60.
I was going to say he's almost 60 now.
I'm 56. I'm 56.
I covered the guy when he was a quarterback there, and was fortunate enough to be able to hand the ball off to Thurman Thomas and throw it to Hartley Dykes, and that made his life.
So was he a good quarterback, Bob?
He was decent. I mean, he wasn't.
In high school, he was handing it off to Thurman Thomas.
College at Oklahoma State.
Oh, okay.
He had Thurman and Barry. He might have had Barry too.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really hard when you got that. And again, Hartley Dykes was maybe the best college receiver, most dominant college receiver I think any of us had ever seen. And went to New England and didn't really make it big as a pro, but was huge in college. And yeah, Oklahoma State was, and then he became an assistant coach, and then he became the head coach. And 20 years he's been the head coach.
Yeah.
He's one of the 2 or 3 most tenured guys in football. And so, but he's not used to being thrown under the bus by his own fans, and he did not take it well.
Who are failures and can't pay their own bills.
That's right.
Listen, I'm stunned by these new rules. I continue, I still haven't entered the 21st century, but on the weekend, Travis Hunter, the Colorado Heisman guy, came all in. They're off the week. He was on both pregame shows at at Penn State, both of them. And, he's making his Heisman tour. And when he was on the ESPN show, they brought up they were kidding about his shoes. And he said, well, I stole these shoes from Dion, my coach. I just go in his office and I take his shoes all the time. I mean, this stuff. Then he said, well, what do you mean you stole shoes? He said, well, I get anything I want. I go in there and get clothes, and coach gives me clothes and all that stuff. I mean, this stuff, Rich, several years ago, this was totally illegal. Right. You can't do any of that. You couldn't do any of this stuff. Give clothes to your players, shoes.
Curry, you remember back in the day when, the famous story about Barry Switzer. His team is behind at halftime. His big locker room speech was, "Okay, guys, car keys in the middle of the room. Nobody gets them back unless we come back and win." And oh my God, scandalous. Now they've all got cars better than the coach.
Yeah. Well, just the
idea
walk used to take what he wants. How about that? Most coaches, you have that respect line that players don't just walk into your office anytime they want to. This guy walks in, takes what he wants. You got to be kidding.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. I was listening to this. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And Travis Hunter's going on and on about he gets whatever he wants. He just goes in and Coach Prime's office and takes what he wants. Prime gives him whatever he wants. I mean, shoes. You remember when shoes were the big deal? You could not. You had. In fact, was it Spurrier that he called Florida State when they got on trouble with shoes? He called them Pre-Shoes University, FSU. Steve Spurrier called them. It was great.
Speaking of FSU, I read something today that Florida State and Clemson, their lawyers are now. It's time for them to go to court and prove why their 2 schools are so much better than everybody else in the ACC. Not a good week to be doing that.
No, not at all. Not at all. Florida State has what, 1 win? Is that right? 1 win.
Florida State still has 1 win. Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Amazing stuff. All right, we're going to come back. We've gone way too long on college football. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the NFL. We're going to talk about players and the press. Curry's got a great story about that. You won't want to miss it. We're going to throw some more people under the bus. Brought to you by Hudson's on the Docks. We welcome you back to Under the Bus. Bob Stevens along with Curry Kirkpatrick and Rich Basirico. Let's see. We got all kinds of players in trouble for dealing with fans, press, media. We got Jason Kelsey apologizing for taking a guy's cell phone who was harassing him and throwing it down on the ground and breaking it. We've got who was it? Who was it? Bosa, who was wearing the MAGA hat? Curry.
Well, yeah, that's in another. Well, okay, yeah. Nick Bosa crashed the interview after the Dallas game a couple of weeks ago, and he's wearing a MAGA hat. And this is totally against the rules. The NFL has a rule against political messaging, and the NFL, of course, said nothing about it. They've done nothing about it. And the rumor is, of course, they were waiting till after the election. Of course, now Trump's elected, and probably the MAGA had Bosa appearing on TV was the key element in Trump's victory.
Yeah,
But
I think that
but
probably was it. Yeah.
the NFL's terrified of Trump. I mean, they didn't want to upset Trump, so they didn't do anything about Bosa's cap 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's a fine at least. And you remember in 17 when the players all knelt for the national anthem, Trump went public, and of course he was president then. He said, get those sons of bitches off the field. I mean, the NFL is terrified of Trump. So good God, what's going to happen now?
No. The big though fuss that really got us onto this topic was the issue with Joel Embiid and a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Curry. You want to tell the story and then tell your story that goes with it?
Well, I've got several stories. You know, Embiid has been criticized for not playing and not reporting his injury. Nobody knows if he's injured or not because he never says anything about it. He hadn't played all year, so this columnist has been after him. But the thing that Embiid was upset was the columnist used his brother, who had passed away several years ago, and his son, mentioned them in the column, and that infuriated Embiid. And he pushed the guy in the locker room. You can't put your hands on the press. You just can't do it, even though the guy probably was out of bounds and mentioning Embiid's family. That's what drove Embiid furiously, and he shoved the guy, and he got the NBA gave him three game suspension. And the 3 games start. They don't start like now when Embiid is supposedly hurt. They start when he's going to be eligible to play.
Good.
So it's 3 games, and it's $1 million. 3 games is $1 million for him. Fine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's without pay. It's 3 games without pay.
Well, I'm glad they're waiting until he's eligible to play and fair, right?
Yeah. Well, also we had Trayvon Diggs came out of the locker room 2 weeks ago. Remember this? After the Dallas got beat by San Francisco. And I love this. He went in the locker room after the game, and he goes on social media right away, and he sees that a Dallas reporter tweeted during the game that he was tweeted, "What is Diggs doing on this play when he didn't cover who's the great San Francisco tight end who made a long play?" Kittle. And Diggs dogged him on the play. So the guy wrote about it. He tweeted it. But Diggs, after the game, he doesn't even care about the loss. He goes on social media and sees this guy tweeted like an hour ago, and he goes rushing out and he confronts the guy in a public press scrum, and he's yelling at this guy. Mike Leslie's the guy's name. And Diggs says, "You don't know football. You can't do nothing that I do. Stay in your lane. Stop trying me, dog." And and Leslie said, "Listen, you want to talk about it? We'll talk about the play." And Diggs said, "No, why don't we talk about these nuts?" And of course he pointed down. So the next day he comes out and he apologizes to the guy, and he brings him a can of nuts. And he says,
"Give him a point for creativity."
Well, yeah. Diggs said, actually, he said, "Tackling is not my strong suit."
Wow.
And he kind of apologized to the guy, and they made up, and they had a bro hug and all that stuff.
Okay.
Were they peanuts? What kind of nuts were they? Peanuts?
I think they were. He offered him choice. He offered him a choice, actually. But
choice. Boiled peanuts or regular?
Well,
peanuts?
Karma's a bitch, because that week, his brother Stephon Diggs got a torn ACL. He's out for the season at Houston, and then Trayvon himself got smoked at Atlanta on Sunday. So I mean, karma's a bitch.
Yes.
But this thing about players confronting media people is. I mean, I went through a lot of this. I never got punched, but a couple of times guys came after me. But I'll tell you this one instance. I was covering college basketball. I was covering a Georgetown Syracuse game. It was the last game of the regular season. They were playing for the co-championship. Syracuse beats Georgetown, and they have this scrum in the press room with guys standing, no chairs. And Boeheim, the Syracuse coach, Jim Boeheim, comes in first. Now, they just played this unbelievable 2-point game for the co-championship of the Big East. And the first thing he says, he goes after me personally because we had named Gary Payton Player of the Year like 2 weeks before. We put Gary Payton on the cover from Oregon State instead of Derek Coleman. And Boeheim says, Kirkpatrick, you know Derek Coleman is the Player of the Year. What the hell? He went on for 3 minutes on me after this great game. The press is all waiting to ask him about the game. He's going after me personally. So, and I remember this because I was standing next to Spike Lee, who was a big Georgetown honk at the time. He was at the game. And I'm standing next to me, and Spike Lee's looking at me like he doesn't even know who I am. And he's like looking at me like, what the hell is he, he's going at. So now Thompson goes, and about 5 minutes into his thing, he goes after me because, it was a couple of years after Hoya Paranoia, which and I wrote about how dirty the Georgetown players were. So he goes after me in the same press conference at the Syracuse. So I got both sides. So I said, my work is done here. That's one of my great moments.
Did you have to hire a bodyguard?
Great moments.
You're at all the press conferences?
Rich, I got another one. You remember Fran Fraschilla when he coached St. John's, who's now, he's now announcer for ESPN. He got fired at St. John's after a few losing seasons because he was doing some bad stuff in the locker room. And he went to New Mexico. So he started all over New Mexico. So I was working for ESPN. So we're going to go do a piece on him at New Mexico. A fish out of water because he's a New York guy and he's in Albuquerque. And, we wanted to go down and talk to him. And I called up and I said, we're going to do this piece. I said, but I'm going to, I know about the St. John's problem. I'm going to ask you about it. And he said, well, okay, he kind of stammered, I said, the problem at St. John's was, and they were in a losing streak. And apparently one game, you remember this, Rich? He went in the locker room, he's dressing down his team, and he pulled his pants down. He pulled his pants down and he pointed at his crotch and he said, you guys don't have this or something like, really embarrassed. And then it got out. Everybody talked about it. And the university was, it's a Catholic university.
Right.
So the fathers were all upset, and that was his last straw for him. He was out. So anyway, I talked to some of the players about this, got them on camera talking to St. John's guys. So I go down and do the piece, and I ask Priscilla about this on camera, and he totally denies it. He totally denies it. Said, no, that's not true. And so we do the piece, and I've got, we've got sound bites of the guys talking about he did it, and then he's denying it. So, it was a killer interview, and so it's about, I heard that he didn't like it. So it's about a month later, and it's the regionals. NCAA regional was in Albuquerque, and I went to the first night, and then I'm leaving the next day. So I'm in the Albuquerque airport, and here comes Fraschilla. He's flying in from a recruiting trip. We're in the Albuquerque airport. He's like 10 yards away from me. He starts screaming at the top of his lungs, Kirkpatrick, you effed me. You effed me. You mother effer. And he's screaming. I mean, there's all these people around. It's like out in public. And he came right at me. He didn't punch me or push me or anything, but he wanted to. He wanted some of me right there. I said, Fran, I told you I was going to talk about the piece. He said, you didn't tell me you had those guys on, on. Jeez. I mean, come on. It's just.
You didn't tell me you had me dead to rights.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
I told Rich, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, on a quick side note, is the pit at Albuquerque one of the 4 or 5 great basketball arenas in the country?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was terrific, especially when the Final Four was there. That's where Valvano ran across the finding somebody to hug. Yeah.
What a fabulous arena. Anyway, go ahead.
It is a pit. I mean, it's so below ground. It's like, weird. Have you been there, Rich?
I have never been there.
No. It's really neat place.
It's a mile high, but you enter at the top and go down to your seats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Get dug into the ground, and it's awesome when they get going crazy on a Saturday night.
I heard it's a crazy place to play at. Curry, he didn't last long at New Mexico either, did he?
No. He was out of there after a couple of years, But the St. John's thing, he started to win when he first came. He's a New York guy.
Right.
Seemed like a perfect place. Then he got
right. I think he was up in Manhattan, and he came from
but then the fathers, the St. John's, the Catholics, did not like his locker room procedures, whatever he did.
I do remember that. Remember that happening.
I had, you know, the scariest thing I had was not really man to man, but it was on the phone. I did a ton of stories on Jerry Tarkanian at UNLV. And when he had the great teams and they got in trouble with, they were dealing with gamblers and all got on probation, and he was doing all sorts of stuff. And I wrote about I had to write about all this stuff. And so he really, disliked me. And I remember one story I did finally, and I came back and, I knew all his cronies because I used to go there. I'd go there all the time. He had one bag man, which was exactly what he was, named Vic Weiss. And Vic Weiss, I would go in Tarkanian's locker room all the time. There's Vic Weiss, and he was a total mafia character. I mean, he was sitting there all the time. He's like Jerry's assistant, or he didn't know anything about basketball. He just was the bad guy. And Vic Weiss, I did a story one time, at the end when I was, finishing up with Tarkanian. I did a story, and it was and I go home and I'm living in Connecticut, and I got a call at home on my home telephone number, and it's Vic Weiss. And he said, Curry, this is Weiss. And he said, that last story you did, he said, do not ever set foot in Las Vegas again.
Wow.
I mean, it's a total threat. It's a total threat on the phone. I told the magazine called UNLV, the president, and got into it, said, we won't have our guys threatened by, your Tarkanian's cronies. The last story on Vic Weiss, I'll tell you this, Tarkanian was dabbling in, going to the NBA. He finally did go to San Antonio, remember, for about 8 games.
Yeah,
but he was talking to the Lakers a year before that about being their head coach during the negotiations. He was negotiating. And one night during the negotiations, the police found Vic Weiss' body in the trunk of a car in a parking garage in LA. It was a total hit job, mafia hit job. Oh yeah. Oh. And that was the end. And that was the end of Tarkanian with the Lakers. And it also, and I do a sigh of relief myself, I think.
Hey, Rich, tell us, who was your bag man?
Oh, I didn't have one.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Come on. Successful coach, Hall of Fame coach like you had to have a bag man. Come on.
It was Curry.
Yeah.
I tried.
Who was handing out those extra pizzas? Come on. Who went out and got the pizzas when you coached? Come on. Yeah. It gotta be somebody.
I had Maynard Barker, who was Maynard was one of our parents. I coached 2 of his sons, Britt and Kevin, who are terrific players, outstanding. And Maynard was always looking for some kids to move in, transfer in. He'd go talk to them and say, come to Hilton at Prep, or before then May River. He was involved in talking to some kids about coming to Prep to play. And then I actually had him towards the end, I had him on the bench with us because he was so passionate about basketball and football. So he was one of our assistant coaches. He was good at it.
And he's still alive and kicking, and he goes to all the games. So they haven't found him in a parking garage.
85 and still does. Yeah, he's a good man. Good man. Yeah, he'd be my guy. Guy.
Unlike Big Boy.
All right. See, we get to the bottom of the story for sure. We ought to. We'll talk about the NFL. We'll wrap up the World Series. We got to bash Rich on the Yankees. This is going to be so much fun. You don't want to miss it as we throw some other people, maybe wearing pinstripes, which maybe fits the mafia thing too. We throw them all under the bus. Brought to you by Hudson's on the Docks. Stay with us. The NFL is kind of in its kind of mid-season, win one, lose one kind of mode these days. The Saints did fire their coach. They threw him under the bus. Dennis Allen loses 7 in a row.
They should have. I was watching the end of that game. They're playing Carolina, probably the worst team in the NFL. They have they're down a point. They gave up a lead. Now they're down a point, driving. All they need is a field goal. It's 4th down and 4. 4th down and 4. Obviously, they need a first down. So what play do you think they run? 4th and 4. How about a 40-yard pass to the sideline, a fade route to the sideline? So it's got to be a perfect pass because the sideline is like a defender. He makes that pass 1 out of 10. That's what you're going to do on 4th and 4 to get a first down. You're going to throw a fade pass at least 40 yards down the field. I don't understand NFL coaches. These guys make so much freaking money, and I watch some of their play call. Not that I'm an expert by any means in making play calls, but I don't understand some of their decision making. It blows my mind. Blows my mind.
Well, how about the most publicized? How about Todd Bowles against the Chiefs?
Yeah,
He gets down there to score the touchdown, and he's got to go for 2 there, Rich, to win the game. Got to.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the underdog. You're playing on the road. You just scored 3 yards. Here we go again. It's 3 yards. Have confidence in your play calling, and go for it. Why do you want to give the ball back?
Baker Mayfield just been hot the whole
Right.
last quarter.
Exactly.
I'm going to say, if you were going to pick a quarterback for 3 yards when you had to have it, Baker Mayfield would find a way. He's one of those guys.
Sure.
And,
Well, and everybody in America, including that's watching the game, what is a Monday night game, including Troy Aikman, Troy Aikman in the booth said before, he got to go for 2. I go for 2 here. You got to go for win the game because you don't want to get in overtime.
No, with Kansas City, they're undefeated.
Depend on a coin flip. Yeah. And Bowles, who's the defensive coach, said, that none of these defensive coaches know what they're doing. I don't, he said it was a very minor thought to go for it. A minor thought. Jeez.
I don't think when you ever watch him on the sidelines, I don't know if he's thinking at all.
He's like Dion. He doesn't look like he's talking at all.
Space. He just stares out there. But 3 yards. Come on, have confidence in your offense that you can get 3 yards. If you don't, okay, so be it. But 3 yards, go for it.
Who's the next coach to get fired? Is it Eberflus with the Bears, or Doug Peterson with Jacksonville, or maybe Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys? Boy, I think
Mike McCarthy. But Jerry Jones doesn't help him out. Here, look at all the trades that were made. He trades for a wide receiver that none of us ever heard of, and gives up a 4th round pick for him. 4th round. I mean, what's his name? Hopkins went to Kansas City for a 5th round. Yeah. What's his name? Mingo, I guess his name. Mingo.
Yeah.
4th round pick. Adams went to the Jets for a 3rd round pick. Mike Williams went to Pittsburgh for a 5th. And as I mentioned, Hopkins went to Kansas City for a 5th round. He gets Mingo for a 4th round pick. He's yet to score a touchdown in the NFL. Years he's played. I think he's played 2 years. He's yet to score a touchdown. You can give a 4th round pick for him. So most of his blame is for Jerry Jones not getting a running back in the offseason because their running backs are awful. And then he goes out and gets a guy how is he going to help them win football games? Terrible. Well, Jerry Jones under the bus.
Yeah, for sure. And he's been under the bus all season. I mean, and the Derrick Henry story, if that's true, Henry's working out in Dallas and he wants to be a Cowboy, and Jerry said he didn't have enough money to pay Derrick Henry. Come on. To get back to that,
Henry might be the MVP. Yeah.
Yeah. To get back to that, the 2-point discussion, there were 3 other teams Sunday that scored a TD in the last 2 minutes of the game, and they kicked for the tie instead of going for the 2-point in the win. 3 other teams, they all lost.
Karma.
A couple didn't go to. Did you see the overtime coin flip, by the way? When Mayfield called tails, I guess, and it came up heads, and he throws his head back like, oh no, because he knows Mahomes is going to get it and go down and score. The game's over. I mean, poor Mayfield. He just stood there because he picked tails and it went head, and the game was over. He knew it. I mean,
think about coin toss is 50-50, right? 50% chance to win from the 3-point yard line. 50% chance you're going to get it in.
It's
Go for
my constant peeve, of course, that the overtime rule is so wrong. You got to give both teams a chance to touch the
Right.
ball. I still say,
Sure.
and they've changed it in the postseason. They're going to do
Right.
it, but now they still don't. How
Right.
about Bob? You mentioned Eberflus.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked like he was on the way out last summer on Hard Knocks
Yeah.
when
You
they
would
were,
have thought.
he was talking about he's changing everything. He went and grew his beard. That was his big change. And he was changing it. He, the guy Tyree Stevenson that turned his back on the Hail Mary play and was
Oh yeah. Yeah.
taunting the
Yeah.
crowd.
Yeah.
He apparently
Benched.
got demoted during the practice during the week, and he took himself out of practice. He left. He just left. And there's no, I mean, even what, and there's no consequence whatsoever. I mean, what
Yeah.
are you kidding me? And then
Yeah.
their star end, DJ Moore, he
Yeah.
looked like he went off the field during a play last week. Did you see this? They're
Yeah.
getting blown out at Arizona, and he goes off the field during the middle of a play. He said he would. Eberflus said after he rolled his ankle or something. It didn't look like he rolled his ankle. And then they asked more on the radio, has Eberflus lost the locker room? And he stammered and he said, I want to say no.
Well,
How's that
well,
for
hey,
a
that's at least honest.
ringing endorsement? The ringing endorsement of your coach.
That's at
Yeah, I
least
don't.
honest. All right.
Yeah,
We're
I
in the
think
final segment. We need to spend a little time on baseball. We need to finish with. I don't know if I want to finish with no Yankees winning a Gold Glove, which should be a huge surprise to anybody. I love the sign at the New York Marathon this last weekend. Kid is holding up a sign to the runners: "Run faster than Garrett Cole did to first base."
I like
How
that. That's a good one.
inspiring is that, huh?
that's
Well,
great.
they're so right. I mean, think about, have you ever seen an inning in all the baseball you've watched, Bob? I know you've watched a lot of baseball. Have you ever seen an inning like that? Those
No,
three mistakes
no.
by Major League Baseball players in the World Series, not just a
Nobody's
regular
seen
game, in the World Series.
nobody's seen an inning like that. The more I look at that play at first, you guys shouldn't Rizzo have tried to run to first himself? Because it looked
But
like he could have beaten Betts if he just catch the
maybe.
ball and roars to first.
Well, Curry, I think he stayed back on the ball because the ball came out and was spinning a little bit, and he stayed back. I'm sure Buckner went through his mind like, I don't want this ball to go
He
through
wanted to
my
make sure he
leg,
caught the ball.
and he
Yeah.
wanted to catch the ball. And every pitcher, I mean, from high school all the way up, you run to first base until the
Yeah.
first baseman waves you off. Once he waves you off, obviously you stop and get out of off the line so you don't get run over. But
He
and
also
the thing
didn't
about
run
it
to
is,
first base. He ran like halfway down the line.
right. We're
He
supposed
was
to go
way
to the
out.
line and then up the line. You go towards
Yeah.
the line and then up the line. And he didn't like he had a brain fart. He stayed on the mound. He did run over there. Why did he stop? What was the purpose of stopping?
To ask
I
for
mean,
Well,
Mookie Betts' autograph, maybe. I don't know.
well, the Yankees deserved what they got to me because in Game 4, when Rich's two buddies out in right field tried to
oh, yeah.
strangle Betts on that fly ball. Rich, have you talked to those guys yet? Your buddies?
No, I
I
haven't.
mean,
I haven't
come on.
talked to.
I
Have you
mean,
ever
after
seen
that,
anybody? I've seen a guy reach over the grant, try to catch the ball. They held his hand and was pulling the ball
They were
out of his
mugging him.
glove. I couldn't believe it. I could
I
not.
was sitting watching this, and I got furious. I don't get. I mean, it was, and then they showed him taking him out, and come
Right.
on. I mean, it was awful. That was bad. They could have really injured. Betts could have really been
They
injured
could.
on that.
Yes,
Could
that's
have.
very true. That is very
Yeah.
true. I didn't
Could have.
understand to sit there and try to put your glove out is one thing, but to what they did was ridiculous, off the chart. Let me throw something under the bus. We talked about those plays, but here's the
Yes.
thing for a World Series in Game 2 in LA and Game 3 in New York. Ice Cube sang before the game, and then Fat Joe sang
Right.
before the
Fat
Yankee.
Joe. Fat
What
Joe.
was that? Help
Fat
me
Joe was
understand
awful.
what that was. That was
Yeah.
so bad. We're watching for baseball. Young kids are watching. I gotta listen to Ice Cube and Fat Joe. You got to be kidding me.
Rich, you got a New York, LA World Series. They couldn't find anybody else, big enough. to sing the anthem. They had to do that.
Oh, that was so bad. That was
Yeah, I thought so too. Major League Baseball went all hip hop on us at the
God.
World Series. I mean, what is that all about? And Fat
Like,
Joe was awful,
he
first
was,
of all.
both of them were
I mean,
awful. Both of them were awful.
the
I mean,
funny
how could
thing.
you sit there? I had to leave the
No,
room,
no,
guys.
no,
I had to
no, no,
leave
no.
the room.
Ice Cube was pretty good. Ice Cube was pretty good. But
It was
actually,
good. You gotta
yeah,
be kidding me.
he was great.
Oh my Lord.
The worst thing was Ice Cube, as he got closer to the dugout, they showed the Yankee dugout. Who's that idiot that plays left field for the Yankees that bats ninth?
Verdugo, yeah.
Yeah.
Verdugo.
Verdugo's got his hat on backwards, and he's bopping and bopping to Ice Cube, and he doesn't even realize that the lyrics were all anti-Yankee lyrics. He doesn't even know that because and Verdugo's bopping and rocking around. I mean, gee.
But like we always used
was,
to say during American Bandstand, I didn't know the words, but I could dance to the beat. You know.
Dance to it, yeah.
All right. Any final folks under the bus?
Those are my two. I can't throw Judge under the bus. I mean, he's a terrific player. I feel sorry for him. You know, he came out and said, "I will remember this to the day I die." I just, for him, he's on center stage. Well, always he's on center stage, but in the World Series, for him to drop that ball after he made an outstanding catch the inning before, I just felt bad for him. And of course, Cole was pitching such a great game. He had a no-hitter going into the fifth inning. The Yankees are winning 5-0. He's got a no-hitter going. The worst of the worst happened, unfortunately. So
you notice that Cole. I'm going to throw Cole under the bus because after in this postseason now in baseball, Cole says he's going to waive his option. He's going to become a free agent, and the Yankees say, "Okay, fine." And Cole immediately backtracks and goes, "Whoa, wait a minute! I probably shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Nobody else is going to pay me this kind of money."
That's right.
Maybe I'll go ahead and agree to the option and hang around for 16 million or 30 million or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's like 34 million or something. But also they're under contract with him for I think it's 4 or 5 years. He'll be 39 years old. They should know better than that. I mean, he's got one or two good left in him. They should. I really, as much as I like him, they should let him go.
Rich, how about your boy Soto? After the worst defeat in the history of the New York Yankees, they get him in the locker room, asking him what's he going to do, and he said, "Oh man, I'll talk to anybody. I'll go anywhere." I mean, you don't say that after the worst loss in the history of the franchise. Right. Exactly. There's Soto, the star player. He's talking about, I'll go wherever I'm paid. Come on. What are you doing?
Let him go. For the amount of money he wants, let him go. They can sign 3 players, and maybe not as good as he is, but they need a pitcher, they need a first baseman, they need an outfielder. Let him go and take that money and spend it on 3 guys.
Well, did you hear what Cashman said? Was it today or yesterday? They asked him about Soto and the discussions, and he sounded like there wasn't any emergency to keep Soto. He sounded like, maybe we'll just, move on. There's a lot of players around. There's a lot of players available in this market.
Which
blah, blah, blah. Don't you? Yeah, but
his agent Boris is I can't stand him. You watch. They'll drag this out until January.
No, of course. Except if he was your agent, you'd love him. Except if he was your agent, you'd love him. You wouldn't need any bagmen if you had.
Yeah, that's true. But how about the guys? I wouldn't need any bagmen then. How about these guys he ruined last year? Montgomery, man, blew up in Arizona, right?
Oh yeah.
And then what's the Snell, right? In San Francisco, had to wait to the last minute because we're going to hold out. We're going to hold out. Let him hold out. The amount of money he wants is ridiculous. There's no baseball player worth that much money. Nobody.
I remember saying that the first time they paid Nolan Ryan $1 million. They said, "There's no guy who pitches every 5 days is worth $1 million a year." Gosh, the minimum salary is $1 million now, huh?
And Bob, when Mickey Mantle had won the Triple Crown, and then the next year he had, he didn't win the Triple Crown, they took money away from him.
He had a bad year. He didn't win the Triple Crown.
He still batted over 300.
But he didn't win the Triple Crown.
I know. Can you imagine?
Plenty other good players
today? Can you imagine go to a player today and say, "We're going to deduct your salary because you didn't hit 50 home runs"? Hey, They don't say anything when they make errors, right? The only one when they come in to negotiate their contract.
Yeah.
Just look what I did to you yesterday. Soto was, if you look at him, as you know how he stares down the pitcher and he kind of does a little shuffle and he puts his hands on his hips and knocks his hips. How many times did he do that in the last 2 games? He didn't do it at all. I think he totally took himself out of the last 2 games. Once he went down 3-0, he was not as focused as he was during the first 3 games. You never saw that knocking of the hip, that little slide step he does before he gets in the
stare down.
Yeah, and then
Stare down.
then shaking his head at the pitcher. When did you
Yeah.
see that in the last 2 games? Didn't happen. He
Uh-oh.
was already counting his money.
Cash the checks.
Yeah.
Curry, anybody else under the bus? We've thrown a bunch of people under.
No, I think I've done enough here.
You've done enough. You've done enough damage. Well, let's
Hang
throw
on.
Rich's bag man under the bus as we close things up. We finally found out who he was. For Rich Basirico and Curry Kirkpatrick, I'm Bob Stevens. Thanks for joining us on an extended version of Under the Bus.
See you guys.
Under the Bus is a production of the Loco Media Network and is filmed on the Hilton Head Island campus of the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. The executive producer is Justin Jarrett, with assistance from Trey Ramsey, Mahogany Hickman, and Adam